Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sociology of Gender once again. Okay, today we're talking about gender and families. Okay, um, I'm going to leave this toolbar open or this like taskbar open here, but you'll be able to still see all of this because I've got turns out like my escape key both stops the recording and gets me out of PowerPoint. And I've not really figured out how to do this. Actually, I think I have now. Okay, so I'm just going to take a risk here. I might have to redo this because, as you know, I'm technologically challenged. So, gender and families. We're going to talk about two things today. One is housework and marriage and gender, and we're going to talk about domestic violence. Okay, so first of all, let's start off with housework. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2017, on the app, we'll go through this. I'll just read it. Let's read it along. On an average day, 84% of women and 68% of men spend some time doing housework activities such as housework, cooking, lawn care, or financial or other household management. Okay. On the days they did household activities, women spent an average of 2.6 hours on these activities, while men spent 2.1 hours. Okay. On an average day, 19% of men did housework, such as cleaning or laundry, compared with 49% of women. 46% of men did food preparation or cleanup, compared with 69% of women. Men were slightly more likely to engage in lawn and garden care than were women, 11% to 8%. From 2003 to 2017, the share of men doing food preparation and cleanup on an average day increased from 35 to 46%. On average, in households with children under age 6, men spend 1.1 hours per day less on household activities, who spend 1.3 hours compared with women. Okay, so what we have here is that women do more housework than men, especially on the days they did household. Yeah, women spend 2.6 hours on these activities while men spend 2.1. And 84% of women and 68% of men spend some time doing housework activities on the average day. Okay, so it looks like women do more housework than men, and they have for quite a while. This was first documented in a book called, okay, here's a thing that maybe you can see or not, but this is basically that American Time Use survey, but from Maggie Maid. I wanted to have this in some kind of documentary, some kind of graphic fashion, so I lifted it out of there. But looking deeper into the American Household Survey. 49% of women did cleaning on an average day, 69% of women did food preparation on an average day, and 8% did garden care. Then at the bottom, you have 19% of men did cleaning on an average day, 46% of men did food preparation, 11% of men did gardening. Okay, let's see. And you can look at more details into the graphic here. Okay, so this might help, it might not. It basically says the same things. Okay, so if it helps, use it. If it doesn't, you can throw it out. Okay. This has been documented for a long time. Arlie Hochschild wrote a book called The Second Shift back in 1989. It's a seminal work in the sociology of the family, and it made a huge impact. Arlie Hochschild, I talked about her last week about her book, The Managed Heart, and she's done some other things that have just been amazing. Really, she's one of my favorite sociologists. here's the idea. After women get home from their day job, they start their second shift, okay, which is housework and childcare. Women do more of the housework than men. Men have more leisure time, and she calls this the leisure gap, okay? At the time, Hochschild studied about 50 families and found in her sample that women on average did 15 hours a week more than men on housework and childcare. That's an extra month of 24-hour days per year. Okay? Well, it's narrowed by quite a bit, but it's not equitable, and here's why. Okay? Here's a few other things too. Okay, women do more of the time-structured work, like cook dinner, which needs to happen every day around 6 p.m. Men do the more flexible jobs, like changing the oil of the car and things like that, mowing the lawn, stuff like that. Women are also more likely to multitask, cooking dinner and folding laundry at the same time. Okay, those kinds of things. When men take care of the children, they're more likely to do the fun stuff. So women do the not so fun work, according to Hochschild's study. More of the qualitative studies need to be done, but who's more likely to do the day-to-day, not so fun aspects of childcare and things, giving baths, making school lunches, things like that, while men are more likely to take the kids to the zoo, movie, baseball game, etc. Okay, I think that this still holds, but I would need a little bit more evidence. So, if we think in lighter terms, we have, women are going more and more into the workforce, but men are slower in getting the back to doing housework in the home. Men have not done as much work in the past because of gender ideologies. Okay, so this is a synthesis of several places here. 3 different kinds of gender ideologies. The traditional gender ideology is that the man identifies with being the breadwinner and a woman identifies with being a homemaker. Okay, those kinds of things. Those, if you have both people are traditional, marriage is going to work okay. Okay, if both people, there's the egalitarian gender ideology as well, where both partners share all the work. The transitional or the neo-traditional says that women can work, but still must be primarily responsible for the housework and childcare. That's the neo-traditional or the transitional. Okay. Now, how do we get these gender ideologies? It's partly of what we're raised with, but not just that. It's balanced with our perceived opportunities. There's a process by which our personal assets are matched with our opportunities as we tend to embrace the gender ideology that matches the opportunities. Hochschild says, quote, "A woman sizes up her education, intelligence, age, charm, sexual attractiveness, her dependency needs, her aspirations, and she matches those against her perception of how women like her are doing in the job market and the, quote, marriage market. Half consciously, she assesses her chances of an interesting, well-paid job or poor. Her courtship pool has very traditional men. She takes these into account. Then, a certain gender ideology, let's say a traditional one, will, quote, make sense to her. She will embrace the ideology that suits her perception of her chances. The same goes for men." For example, in my life, part of the reason why I embraced an egalitarian gender ideology was because I never felt that I could make enough money to support a family, that I would have to marry somebody who's basically on the same economic level as I am. So we would both have to work together in terms of taking care of the house and having a career. So that's kind of partly why I embrace that kind of gender ideology. I don't know if this resonates with you, but it's something to consider. So it's not just what we're socialized with. It's kind of like what makes sense to us as we kind of like approach like, getting careers and families, which gender ideology to embrace. Okay. So, okay, a few things in the culture, kind of reinforce this stuff. One is the ideology of the supermom. Okay, here's a comic here. 3 kids, full-time job, night classes, and coaches a girls' basketball team. She's stretched too thin. Okay, so this is from Mike Baldwin, a cartoonist. Now, whether you think this is funny or not, the point is made here. This is the idea of the supermom. Okay, she can have it all. It used to be portrayed, it still kind of is, like, she's got the slick back hair, she's got the baby in one arm, the briefcase in the other, and she's in this business suit, and she's ready to take on the day, okay? This has been around since the 1970s. There was a television commercial that you could look up on YouTube. It's from Anjali. And it's a woman singing in a sultry voice, I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never let you forget that you are a man, 'cause I'm a woman. Okay? And that's what the woman who has it all is, the supermom. The problem with that is that it's exhausting. Okay? Many women are incredibly frazzled, tired, stressed out, and in their attempt to have it all, they have to do it all. It's really not as glamorous as the media makes it out to be. As it says here, she's stretched too thin. Okay, so a second cultural ideology is from Sharon Hayes, and I get this from the Wade and Ferry book that I've been using. And this is the ideology of intensive mothering. Okay, they say that this ideology says the following. First of all, taking care of children is the woman's job. Okay, it takes a copious amount of time, energy, and material resources. And it is also supposed to be the highest priority in her life, okay? This means that children are to be the highest priority for women. Both the supermom and intensive motherhood ideologies are cultural reasons that women take on more than men. In other words, cultural ideas that lead to neo-traditionalism, okay? So, in both of those, the supermom and the ideology of intensive mothering, it says that, taking care of children is the highest priority, okay? One of the biggest stresses on marriages when it comes to raising children is compromise. And, like to make marriages work, you have to compromise. There's this idea, though, that women can't really compromise when it comes to raising children. Okay, that it's or they'll be seen as bad mothers. Okay, and there's also a phenomenon called mother blame. When something bad happens, oftentimes people ask, "Where was the mother?" Okay, now they'll say sometimes where are the parents, but I think saying where was the mother is said more than where was the father. Okay. Agree with me or disagree with me. I can't really, prove it at this point, but see if that resonates with you. Okay. So, but there are also structural reasons, institutional pressures that lead to neo-traditionalism. So it's not so much in terms of, they're related. It's not just about norms, values, and beliefs, but how society is organized. Okay, that's what I mean by social structure. Okay, you see, most couples both men and women want to be egalitarian. I'll get to that later. However, both work and family have high demands. Okay, so most men and women want egalitarianism, but they have high demands. In other words, they are greedy institutions. Work demands a lot of us. Family demands a lot of us. Okay, so couples want to share both work and home activities, but since the demands are so high, one or both of them have to cut back at work. The problem is most families can't afford for both partners to cut back. Okay, they rely upon a full-time two-income family here. Many people only have employer-based health insurance by working full-time. Okay, so can you both cut back to 30 hours a week? Hard to do if one of you has to work full-time. Okay, long commutes add to time pressures too. Especially since other places that support the family, such as doctors' offices and child care centers, can be all over town. Also, I came across this, but I'm not sure it's updated, is about the tax code. Maybe some of you are more familiar than I am. I tried to check this out in time, but I couldn't do it, but I will check it out soon as that. I was told that you get a tax break. Say you have one person who makes in a couple that makes $140,000 a year and another person who makes $0. Okay, so the household makes $140,000, but one person makes all that $140,000. You pay less in taxes if both of you make $70,000. That's what I've heard before, but don't write that down, or not part of the class. But maybe somebody can enlighten me here. I tried to look it up and I couldn't do it because tax code. Tried to get into contact with an accounting instructor, couldn't do it. So anyway, the point is well made, though, is that that there are institutional pressures that lead to neo-traditionalism. So you have to make a decision. Do you share both work and housework, or do you specialize? Okay. Does one work full-time and the other part-time, or not at all, in order to take care of the house and children? How do you make the decision? Share or specialize, okay? First of all, gender ideologies play a role. They do, okay? The idea that, it's if you have a transitional or traditional or neo-traditional ideology, that plays the role. But another thing that plays a role, though, are the structural things. Who is more, don't forget about the wage gap, okay? Remember, men make more money than women. So men are more economically viable. So women are the ones to cut back. Okay, this is especially true after the birth of a child. It makes sense after the birth of a child for a woman to cut back at work, take some time off and, bond with the child and things. However, what's the man doing at this time? Supporting the family, but at the same time, he is working, building his career, maybe getting raises and promotions. When women go back to work, and legally they've got to be at the same level as when they took leave, but they've lost that time to build their careers. Okay? Now, you already have this with one child, but then you have more than, this is true when children are involved, and the more children that are involved, the more so. Let's take a look at the average number of hours, worked per week. With no children, men and women on average work 32 to 27. Okay, it's 32 to 27. 32 hours for men, for women, 27 hours. little bit different. You see the increase there with one child, an average of 40 for men, 26 for women. For two children, 42 for men, 23 for women. With three or more, 46 for men, 18 for women. Okay, so this comes from the Pew Research Center analysis of the American Time Use Survey. Okay, so the more children there are, the more there is a gap between the hours worked here. So it's more economically viable often for men to be the ones that work. Okay, so it's more likely. So that's going to push more into a transitional or neo-traditional, way of doing things. So how does one maintain egalitarianism in the face of these cultural and institutional pressures? Well, could do it through something called domestic outsourcing. That's paying non-family members to do the family-related tasks. These are nannies, housekeepers, gardeners, getting takeout, delivery, things like that. Okay, hiring out people to do family-related things. Well, it's expensive, so a lot of couples can't do it. Second, those hired are making less money than the couples. In other words, you don't just, why would you pay somebody the same amount of money that you're making at a job? It doesn't make any sense. So, to just pay them anything. So they're making less, okay? And that partly leads to a phenomenon of something called a care chain. This is in which, usually, a woman leaves her children in the care of a family member so she can take care of other people's family members. This can lead to more equality in the marriage, but less equality in society. Okay, so that's something to consider as well with these care chains, is that how much do these nannies make? Okay, or and are they leaving? Who's taking care of their children? This is globalized. Okay, you might want to look up something called the globalization of mothering. Arlie Hochschild again, talks about this. Okay, or both of cutting back from work, so both can take care of the household. Some people can do it, others can't. Okay, because it's just you just can't survive on that. Okay, so as I said earlier, well, what if both men and women want egalitarian marriages? But what if that cannot be achieved? What if you can't domestically outsource? Or what if you both can't cut back at work? Okay, what's the fallback position? What's the fallback gender ideology? And the fallback gender ideology, this is from Kathleen Gearson of Women's and Men's Gender Ideologies and Fallbacks. Okay, so as you see here, 80% of women's ideals are egalitarian. It's about 68% for men. The fallback position for men is neo-traditional. The fallback position for women is being self-reliant. Okay, it's self-reliance. What do I mean by that? According to Lisa Wade and Myra Maxferry, quote, faced with a husband who wants them to be a housewife or work part-time, almost 3/4 of women would rather divorce and raise their kids alone. Okay, so many women 3/4 of women will say, no, I'm not doing that. I'd rather raise the kids alone than do that. Okay, in 30% of divorces, the main reason cited was a conflict over housework. Okay, comes from something from the Harvard Business School from 2018 by Whillans, Powell, and Norton. Buying marital bliss, time-saving purchases promote relationship satisfaction. They are saying, in order for you to be happy in your marriage, you should basically do domestic outsourcing. You should basically, spend money on things so you can have more time together. Okay, this is why. Generally, in marriages, women are less happy than men in marriages. Women are more likely to initiate divorce, and divorced men are unhappier than divorced women. Okay, so yes, the conflicts over housework can lead to bad marriages. Okay, so when people do, when men do share the housework, remember that Michael Kimball on gender, he showed that the research shows that that when men share housework and childcare, men, women, and children are happier, and there's more sex. Okay, how much is sort of an open question. Some old research from back in the 1990s emphasized 50-50 and equality. Other research emphasized a man doing 60% of the breadwinning and women doing 60% of the housekeeping. That's believable. That for many people, they are most comfortable with mostly sharing. Okay, they're still like embracing this kind of gender ideology a little bit. They don't want the man to take it over completely, but or the women to take over breadwinning completely. But they want it to be more equal than what was done traditionally. Okay, your case may be different. It's definitely different in my household, but there's a certain thing of looking at society that this 60-40 arrangement makes the most sense. But it also depends upon your own gender ideology, because if you are like saying that, you want somebody who's like doing 50-50, then you're going to want a partner that's doing 50-50, and you're going to look at, everything, other arrangements as unfair. So most people want egalitarianism, but, what's the fallback position? That's the part there too. So these are things that couples have to negotiate. Okay. So there's that. Okay. Okay. So now we make the transition into family violence. Okay. One thing to emphasize about family violence. Okay, there's men doing 50% of the breadwinning and 40% of the housework. Okay. Other than the police and the military, the family is the most violent institution in American society. Okay? People are more likely to be hit, punched, kicked, beaten, stabbed, raped, and murdered in their own family by people they love than anyone else. Okay. So many people think of the family as a haven in a heartless world. That's the quote there, haven in a heartless world. Well, some people do find love, intimacy, trust in their own family and things like that. But for others, the family is a very dangerous place. And there's all sorts of physical and sexual abuse that occur. And here I want to talk about domestic violence. The willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and or other abusive behavior perpetrated by an intimate partner against another, according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. They go on to say, it is an epidemic affecting individuals of every community, regardless of age, economic status, race, religion, nationality, or educational background. Violence against women is often accompanied by emotionally abusive and controlling behavior, and thus is part of a systemic pattern of dominance and control. Domestic violence results in physical injury, psychological trauma, and sometimes death. The consequences of domestic violence can cross generations and truly last a lifetime. Okay? It happens a lot, and here are some statistics that I pulled from National Coalition Against Domestic Violence /statistics. There are a lot more in there, but you can look it up here. But, just to say here, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner. On a typical day, there are more than 20,000 phone calls placed to domestic violence hotlines nationwide. The presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of homicide by 500%. Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crime. Women between the ages of 18 and 24 are most commonly abused by an intimate partner. They didn't really say that right. What they should be saying, yes, it's true that that's the most vulnerable years, but most women ages 18 to 24 are not abused by an intimate partner. It just doesn't seem to be the best written sentence right now as I'm reading it. So I think that's what they mean, though, is that 18 to 24 are the most vulnerable ages to experience domestic violence. 19% of domestic violence involves a weapon. Domestic victimization is correlated with a higher rate of depression and suicidal behavior. Only 34% of people who are injured by an intimate partner receive medical care for their injuries. A study of intimate partner homicides found that 20% of the victims were not intimate partners themselves, but other people. 72% of all murder-suicides involve an intimate partner. 94% of these victims of these murder-suicides are female. Let's see. 1 in 15 children are exposed to intimate violence each year, and I want to just come in here. The number one predictor of a boy growing up to abuse his partner is watching his father or father figure abuse his mother. Okay, that's the number one predictor. This is according to the American Psychological Association. Okay, so what's going on here? Okay, well, think about a healthy relationship first of all. What does a healthy relationship consist of? We might think of things like respect, communication, emotional support, a connectedness, being part of a community, okay? Freedom, okay? Where people are free to do what they want, okay? Where people's independence is supported, where people have strong communication, strong listening, okay? Where people, equality might be another one, okay? And, peace and justice, all of these things, okay? Well, this is the power and control wheel, okay? That you've come across, okay? Just to talk about this a little bit, it can be, so at the center of this, of course, of the power and control wheel is power and control. These are ways in which men maintain power and control over women. Now, let me just put it out here now. I am aware that sometimes women abuse men physically. I'm aware of this. I am also aware that domestic violence is a big problem in the LGBTQ community. So sometimes men abuse men and sometimes women abuse women. I am quite aware of this. However, most of the time when we run into problems and also the more severe problems that we have is men abusing women. So I'm going to generalize it like that, but I'm not going, but I am aware that there are other cases, and I don't want to minimize those. Okay, but the more of the problems that we come across and the more severe problems we come across is the man abusing the woman. Okay, so using intimidation, making her afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, things like that. Oh, that doesn't seem very peaceful, not very respectful. Using emotional abuse is putting her down, making her feel bad about herself, calling her names. And a healthy relationship is supposed to be like, emotionally supportive, emotionally validating and things like that. Not making her think she's crazy and things like that. Using isolation, controlling what she does, who she sees, and talks to, what she reads, etc. You see, this kind of isolation is a way in which men also keep women from leaving because they are limiting their social networks and ways to get out of the relationship. Okay, minimizing, denying, and blaming, okay, making light of the abuse and not taking her concerns about it seriously, saying it didn't happen, shifting responsibility, saying she caused it. That's really not, part of a healthy relationship is also taking responsibility for your actions, okay? That's not happening there. Using children, making her feel guilty about the children, using the children to relay messages. This is bad for children, okay? Using male privilege, treating her like a servant, making all the big decisions, acting like the master of the castle, things like that, okay? That doesn't seem to be, doesn't seem to promote equality, okay? Using economic abuse, preventing her in getting or keeping a job, also doesn't promote equality, but also is another way in which men keep women in these relationships is preventing her from having her own money, so she cannot support herself, and so she is economically dependent upon him, or her children are. And I'll get deeper into that in a bit. Using coercion or threats, making and or carrying out threats to do something to hurt her, threatening to leave her, commit suicide, to report her to welfare, making her drop charges, making her do illegal things. Things like this, just making somebody do things. In a healthy relationship, people are free, to stay or go, whatever, okay, in a healthy relationship. These are used to make women stay. There are all these things here to make women stay in a relationship and to be controlled within the relationship. Okay, so let's say you go on a date with a man, and first date, then he hits you. Is there a second date? Most people say, of course not. How could you say that? And that's my point, is that it doesn't start off this way. These relationships start off much like any other relationship. It's great, okay? It's the honeymoon. For those of you who have fallen in love before, you might recall that falling in love was like a pretty exciting thing, okay? There's the honeymoon phase. There's, there's flowers, there's chocolate, there's bad poetry, or sometimes good poetry. But, you get my point. It's like, you're like in the honeymoon phase and things are just great, okay? So that's there. But then starts coming the tension building phase where the woman feels like she's walking on eggshells, that he gets irritated by the slightest things, and nothing seems to alleviate that tension. So then comes to the act of acute violence. This comes from a woman named Lenore Walker, by the way, who did this. Okay. So then there's the phase of acute violence, and then what does he do? I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. Here's some flowers, here's some chocolate, let's have some champagne, let's make up, don't leave me, please, and things like that. Back to the honeymoon phase. That goes along for the while, till the tension building and the violence. And as time goes on, the honeymoon phase gets shorter until it disappears. The tension building phase, okay, starts getting shorter and then it disappears. And then there's just violence. And that's how it will stay, according to Lenore Walker, until the relationship ends. So, the relationship ending. The wrong question that is often asked is why women stay. It's the wrong question, though I'm going to answer it, about why women stay in these relationships, because it's instructive. However, there's a lot of assumptions that go along with it, and there's also, it takes focus off of men who abuse. Okay, so why do women stay? Well, one reason could be low self-esteem. I once saw a documentary where a woman said that she has always been, she was always taught that this is the way relationships should be, that she had been abused her whole life, and this is what she deserved. Okay? She said, that she was abused as a child as well. And so it was she had low self-esteem and got into an abusive relationship. Sometimes there's a belief that the abuser will change. I've seen this happen, especially at the beginning. The first part of the cycle is that, when he says, I won't do it again, there's that she believes him. These two go together, economic hardship or child support. Maybe they're economically dependent upon him. Maybe that cycle of violence, maybe that kind of power and control wheel has had an effect. There's shame and guilt also. It can be, often humiliating to go to your friends and or your family and say that you've been in an abusive relationship. Also, there are some religions that forbid divorce. I know of cases in which women have gone to their clergy and talked to them about being abused, and the clergy has said you have to stay in the relationship because divorce is a sin. So they are, there's shame and guilt that keep them there. Love. Sometimes there's still love going on. Women love their abusers, okay? It's not like they're abusers all the time. There's other parts to them too, but there's that abuse too. And they often say that, they want the relationship and they want the love, but they want the abuse to stop, okay? Learned helplessness is another one. There's a psychological theory that if you put people in impossible situations, that they will just give up and be very passive. They've done laboratory experiments with rats and things like this and found that. Okay, the biggest one to me is fear. Okay, fear of being alone, fear of things getting worse, and I'll get to that in a bit. Okay, here's a few assumptions about that whole question, though, about why women stay. The assumptions about the question is that leaving is easy or simple. Abusive partners will go to all sorts of measures to keep women from leaving. Okay, sabotaging cars, smashing their cell phones, threatening, things like that. That women have not made attempts to leave. It takes women, I've heard about 7 8 attempts to leave before she finally does. This is also said in the documentary you're going to see, Power and Control. Okay. The assumption also is that the woman has not left. Many women who leave are still harassed and stalked, and leaving does not always stop the violence. Women who leave are at a 75% higher risk of being killed by their abusers and remain at an increased risk for at least 2 years. Okay, so that's why there's fear. Okay, because if a woman is being threatened with, if you leave me, I'll kill you, she might not want to leave. Okay? So it says something about sexism in our society when we ask the question, why does she stay? The more pertinent question is like, why is he committing acts of violence? Okay? So, what's a woman to do? What if she commits an act of violence against him? In other words, I'm asking, what if she kills him in self-defense? Well, women who kill their partners in self-defense receive harsher prison sentences for killing their male partners than their male partners receive for killing their female partners. Okay? Okay, this is according to the ACLU. Okay, the average prison sentence for men who kill the female partners is 2 to 6 years, I guess, depending upon the state. Okay, women who kill their partners are sentenced on average to 15 years, despite the fact that most women who kill their partners do so to protect themselves from violence initiated by their partners. Okay, the classic study, a big classic study was by Elizabeth Dermody Leonard. She wrote a book called Convicted Survivors, and it was her dissertation that turned into a book. And that, so you can look this up. It's kind of old, but still, these are updated statistics from the ACLU. Okay, so that you can look up. Okay, why is this the case? Is part of it is self-defense laws assume equal combatants. So it is thought that if a man punches a man and then that man who was punched takes out a gun and shoots them, that's no longer self-defense. That's upping the ante. That's upping the level of violence. So, however, a woman might need a knife or a gun in order to defend herself, okay? Because he can kill her just with his bare hands. Oftentimes, that's the case. So a woman needs like a weapon to defend herself. But then when she does, when she acts upon it, oftentimes she has like a knife or a gun or something. That is often considered premeditation, okay? And then also, women who behave violently, this particular with black women, are heavily stigmatized because they're going against their gender identity. There's two competing hypotheses here. One is this is talking about the evil woman hypothesis, that women who act violently are considered especially evil and deserve the harsher treatment they get. This is opposed to another one that says that women get easier treatment. That is called the chivalry hypothesis. Okay, that when women are commit crimes, that it's still up to men to protect them and stuff and give them less harsh sentences. This seems to support the evil women hypothesis. Okay, so. Okay, so watch that documentary, Power and Control, and then we will do the discussions on it. And okay, so have a great week, and I'll be back next week. Bye.